I know you've worked a lot with the startup world and others in business, but for us with screenwriters and other artists, they often have a fear of getting up and presenting their own story. They're fine with their work, or maybe they feel more comfortable with their work. How do you help someone with their story, knowing that there's going to be people challenging them, maybe outwardly so, poking holes in it, or it's just a body language, a general feel of the room that's not so embracing, and they know they still have to keep their composure, tell their story, stay on track?
Yes, when I work with the entrepreneurs, a lot of times they're challenged. I'm not exactly sure how it is in a pitch meeting, but I can imagine with the entrepreneurs, this is their baby too. It's not so different than a writer, although as a fellow writer, those are your babies, right? And you're like, okay, wait a minute, you better be nice to my kids in here, right? So it's even more so. But with the entrepreneurs, as they get up and they do the pitch and then they open it up to Q&A, there's investors sitting in the audience that are, very well educated. They've had successful exits. They're the ones investing, potentially writing a check if these people are interesting enough. So they really want to do their due diligence. And they go in, some of them, not all of them, they can be tough. I love my investors, but man, they're kind of crusty and rough around the edges. And they go for the jugular. And so I work with my speakers on Q&A because they need to be prepared to handle that without getting defensive, because it's easy to take it personally. But most of the time you'll notice when a question is asked when it's open to Q&A and somebody stands up, this is having observed thousands of people ask questions, somebody standing up, they're usually not asking the question for you to really respond. They're asking the question to show their knowledge and how smart they are, right? You've seen that, right?
Oh, it happens in interviews as well, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. See? Yeah. And so I work with them on all of that so they're prepared to receive the grilling that they're going to get, or those kind of weird questions that they get that don't make any sense, that are really show-off questions. So let me show you how smart I am questions.
Right.
So, but because they can be so kind of gruff and insensitive often, I just grill my own speakers, and I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to put out the hardest questions. 1, 2, 3. And we really work on them being straightforward and as transparent as possible. And when they don't know, they don't know. And they say, you know what, I'm not sure. Let's take that offline afterwards. We'll have a conversation about it. I'd like to get your input. And so then all of a sudden you diffuse. And when you say to a person who's asked a question, who's maybe slightly antagonistic, you say, I'm so glad you brought up that point. I hadn't thought that through entirely, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it afterwards. So what happens is you diffuse any possible escalation of the person being antagonistic. And you then validate them. You say, I see you. I see you, and what you have to say is worthy. Even though inside you might be going, oh my God, right? But you do validate them. That's the meaning beneath the words, right? And then it's very difficult, it's very disarming when a person does that. When you think about that in your own life, when you're agitated and somebody really sees you and says, oh, I'm so sorry. May we take this outside and have a quick conversation? That was my oversight. And then all of a sudden it's like, all the steam gets out. You're like, oh, I feel like a jerk, right? So those kinds of things, but it's that ability to go inside and say, this is not about me. I don't need to let my ego step forward and fight this fight. I don't need to be right? I just need to say I'm here to learn. And that's what startups are there to do. They don't know everything, and the investor knows that. And I would imagine that it's not so different in the writing room, right? Where you go in and you pitch to, to the group that you're pitching to? How many do they usually pitch to? 2, 3, 4, 6, 10?
I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
I've never pitched, but, or Q&As, sorry to interrupt, but filmmaker Q&As as well. I've definitely seen that where you're right, you're absolutely right. Someone stands up and they're posing it as a question, but they're really throwing out to the filmmaker kind of like they were challenging them in some way, even though, they're just an audience member.
Right, let me show you how smart I am again, right? And then if you're taking that on the surface, as communication is, then you, the receiver of the question, is missing the opportunity to go deeper. Boy, I very much appreciate that you brought that up. I can see how you would see that. Hadn't thought about it in that way, but I can see how you would say. And then what you do, once you validate the person, because that's really important, to validate them, then you can drive the train in the direction you want it to go, which is some ways the best thing to do, because sometimes people are just grandstanding to be seen, right?
Absolutely.
And so as a spokesperson, when I would appear on these television talk shows, that's the thing that I learned, is that the host and hostess are just there. When a guest is really worth their weight in gold, the guest, and you'll see this, the ones that are really good on any of the late night shows, right? They're interviewed to death, the guest that comes on there. The producer will call and they will interview them for an hour. Okay, what is it you want to say? What stories do you want to tell? And the guest will say, oh, I'd like to tell the story about my cat. No, that doesn't sound good. The producer will say, what else you got? Well, I got one about my girlfriend. Oh, that's a good one. All right, I'm going to tell the story, right? So the producer will weed through the stories and it looks like they're just having a conversation, but it's all scripted. Everybody already knows the direction it's going in, right? So much like a late night talk show, when I would be a spokesperson, I realized the host and hostess just want to kick back. They want me to drive the train. And so that's what I would do. And the minute they could tell that I was in control, they kind of breathed a sigh of relief, and then they would have fun. Look at that skirt length. I like that boot. What do you think, Sally? And they were having a lot more fun because they felt like I could drive the train. And any guest on any panel, on any TV show, that is your job, to come forward and let the host and hostess relax a little, to tell the stories,
Absolutely.
to engage the audience, and to really take your time and be in the moment.